The hypersonic gap, the weapon no ground system can stop, and the architecture that can. Here is the most important sentence in modern defense, and almost no one has said it out plainly. The United States right now, today, has no deployed, operational, reliable way to stop a maneuvering hypersonic glide vehicle in the terminal phase of flight. Neither does any ally. Neither does any nation on Earth. The weapon exists. The counter to the weapon does not. And the two nations building the most of them, China and Russia, are about to triple their inventories. This video is about that gap. About why the gap exists. About why nothing currently in the field can close it. And about the one architecture, the Golden Dome, that is the only technically credible answer. Because the answer is not a faster missile on the ground. The answer is a missile in space. And the United States is the only nation building one. Chapter 1. The inflection point and the tripling. To understand how we got here, you have to go back to August 2021. That month, China conducted a test that the chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff, General Mark Milley, would later call very close to a Sputnik moment. A nuclear-capable hypersonic glide vehicle launched atop a Long March rocket circled the entire globe through low Earth orbit using a fractional orbital bombardment system. The FOBS architecture first theorized during the Cold War and believed abandoned before descending toward its target. The glide vehicle released from the booster, skipped through the upper atmosphere, and struck within roughly 24 miles of its aim point after a flight of more than 25,000 miles. The Financial Times broke the story in October 2021. American intelligence was caught off guard. The test proved two things that changed everything. First, that China had mastered a glide vehicle capable of sustained global range flight. Second, that the existing American missile defense architecture, built to intercept predictable ballistic missiles flying over the poles, could not see, track, or engage a weapon that orbited the Earth and arrived from an unexpected direction at hypersonic speed. This was the death of the Ballistic Age. For 60 years, missile defense assumed the threat would follow a Keplerian arc, up, over, down, predictable. The August 2021 test ended that assumption. The hypersonic chaos age had begun. The chaos was confirmed on the battlefield. In Ukraine, Russia operationalized its hypersonic arsenal against a live, Western-equipped air defense network. The Kinzhal, the air-launched aeroballistic missile, was fired repeatedly. Its early strikes in 2022, marketed by Moscow as proof that no Western system could stop Russian hypersonics. The Patriot PAC-3 MSE batteries that arrived in Ukraine in 2023 would eventually prove that claim wrong, downing multiple Kinzhals. But the engagement windows were measured in single-digit seconds, the margins were razor-thin, and the intercept succeeded because the Kinzhal, despite its speed, flies a relatively predictable aeroballistic path. The harder weapon, the true maneuvering glide vehicle, was never tested against the Patriot because Ukraine never faced one. Russia's Zircon scramjet-powered hypersonic cruise missile entered combat use in early 2024, fired from frigates against ground targets. The pattern was set. The weapons were real, they were being used, and the defense against them was being improvised under fire, one engagement at a time. Now, fast forward to July 2026. Reporting from platforms including First Post and Vantage made public what United States intelligence had been warning for months. China and Russia are not merely fielding hypersonic weapons. They are scaling them. Massively. The trajectory, per the intelligence warnings, points to China fielding up to 4,000 hypersonic weapons and Russia up to 1,000 by the year 2035. Combined, that is a tripling of projected inventory. A shift from boutique demonstration weapons, like the 2021 FOBS test, to mass-saturating first-day-of-war arsenals. Let us be precise about what is already deployed. China's arsenal. The DF-17, armed with the DF-ZF glide vehicle, China's primary hypersonic strike system, with an estimated 100 to 150 units already deployed at roughly $15 to $25 million apiece. The YJ-19 and CJ-1000 ship and air-launched scramjet cruise missiles deployed in the dozens and made cheap by China's industrial supply chains. Russia's arsenal. The Avangard, an intercontinental glide vehicle atop ICBMs, 2 to 3 dozen active units at the high end of the cost curve. The Zircon scramjet cruise missile, 50 to 100 units. The Kinzhal aeroballistic missile, depleted by combat use in Ukraine but still in the field. Together, a spectrum of weapons priced from $3 million to $60 million, built to saturate. Do the math on the trajectory. China to 4,000. Russia to 1,000. 5,000 hypersonic weapons by 2035. The 2021 FOBS test was the proof of concept. The Ukraine operational use was the proof of war. The tripling is the proof of intent. This is not an arms race. That is a doctrine of saturation, the belief that no defense can handle the volume, and that the West will not build the one architecture that could. This video argues that the West can, that the West must, that the United States, alone, is the nation that has to lead it because no one else is building it. Chapter 2, the weapon. Before we explain why nothing can stop it, we have to be precise about what it actually is, because the word hypersonic gets used loosely, and the precision matters. Hypersonic means Mach 5 or faster, 5 times the speed of sound or more. But speed alone is not what makes these weapons hard to stop. A conventional intercontinental ballistic missile re-enters the atmosphere at Mach 20+, and we have systems that can stop those. What makes hypersonic glide vehicles different is not the speed. It is the maneuver. There are 2 categories. The hypersonic glide vehicle, the HGV, like the Avangard, like the DF-ZF. This is a payload launched atop a rocket booster, much like a ballistic missile. But instead of following a predictable parabolic arc, the glide vehicle detaches from the booster and rides the upper atmosphere, between 30 and 80 kilometers of altitude, using aerodynamic lift to maneuver. It does not follow a Keplerian trajectory. It does not follow any pre-computable path. It turns. It dives. It pulls high G maneuvers continuously. By the time you compute where it will be, it is no longer there. The hypersonic cruise missile, the HCM, like the Zircon, like the CJ-1000. This is an air-breathing missile powered by a scramjet that sustains hypersonic flight under its own propulsion through the atmosphere. It flies lower and more predictably than a glide vehicle, but it is still fast enough and low enough to defeat most defenses by timeline alone. The glide vehicle is the harder problem. The cruise missile is the more numerous one. Both must be solved. And here is the central technical fact that drives everything that follows. Every missile defense system currently deployed by the United States and its allies works on the same foundational principle: prediction. The radar tracks the target. The fire control computer computes the target's future position based on its current trajectory. The interceptor flies to that future point. The interceptor and the target arrive at the same place at the same time. The intercept happens. A maneuvering hypersonic glide vehicle breaks that entire principle. There is no fixed future position to compute because the target has not decided where it is going. The prediction delta, the gap between where the target is predicted to be and where it actually is, grows with every maneuver. By the time the interceptor corrects, the target has moved again. The engagement window collapses to single-digit seconds. The math that has governed missile defense for 60 years simply does not apply. Chapter 3, why nothing on the ground can stop. Let us walk through every deployed system honestly and explain exactly why each one fails against a maneuvering hypersonic. This is not a criticism of these systems. They are extraordinary at what they were built to do. They were not built to do this. The ground-based mid-course defense system, the GMD, the United States Homeland Defense against intercontinental ballistic missiles. Capability against hypersonic glide vehicles? None. Technical reason? GMD is engineered to intercept predictable ICBMs in the vacuum of space at very high altitude. Hypersonic glide vehicles fly at 30 to 80 kilometers in the upper atmosphere, far below GMD's operational envelope. The glide vehicle underflies the entire system. GMD never sees it. GMD cannot shoot down at a target it was never designed to reach. Aegis Ballistic Missile Defense and the Standard Missile 3. Capability against hypersonic glide vehicles? None. Technical reason? The SM-3 carries a kinetic exo-atmospheric kill vehicle, a hit-to-kill warhead designed to operate in the vacuum. It is not designed to operate in the atmosphere. An HGV travels through the atmosphere. The atmospheric friction, the air density, the thermal environment at 30 to 80 kilometers would destabilize or burn up the SM-3's divert and attitude control thrusters. The Seeker, built for the cold vacuum, is blinded by the heat and density of the atmosphere. The weapon literally cannot go where the target is. That, the Terminal High Altitude Area Defense System. Capability against hypersonic glide vehicles. Highly limited, unlikely to succeed. Technical reason? That operates in the high endoatmosphere and low exoatmosphere, so it at least has the altitude coverage. But its radar and its interceptor's intercept logic are both optimized for predictable ballistic trajectories. The fire control solution assumes the target continues on its current path. A late-stage hypersonic maneuver, a turn, a dive, a pull, breaks the tracking lock. The interceptor commits to a point the target has already left. The Patriot PAC-3 MSE. Capability against hypersonic glide vehicles, marginal, point defense only, and only in the narrowest of windows. Technical reason? The PAC-3 MSE does have the agility. Its attitude control motors give it the ability to hit maneuvering targets. That is what makes it excellent against tactical ballistic missiles in terminal descent. But its radar horizon is the problem. Hypersonic glide vehicles fly low. They emerge over the radar horizon only seconds before impact. By the time the Patriot radar sees the target, tracks it, computes a fire control solution, and launches, the engagement window is measured in single-digit seconds, sometimes less. The Patriot was not built for that timeline. In Ukraine, the Patriot has intercepted the Kinzhal, but the Kinzhal, for all its speed, flies a predictable path. A maneuvering glide vehicle is a different problem, and the Patriot is not the answer to it. Here is the honest summary. Every ground-based and sea-based interceptor currently deployed by the United States and its allies either cannot reach a maneuvering hypersonic glide vehicle, cannot survive the environment a glide vehicle flies in, cannot hold a tracking lock against its maneuvers, or cannot react within the engagement window its low-altitude, high-speed profile allows. The systems are not broken. They were built for a different threat. The hypersonic glide vehicle is a new threat, and it requires a new architecture. Chapter 4. The vulnerability window. There is one phase of a hypersonic weapons flight where it is vulnerable. 1. And exploiting it changes everything. The boost and ascent phase. The first minutes of flight. The moment when the missile is still attached to its rocket booster, before the glide vehicle separates, before the cruise missile scramjet stabilizes, before any maneuvering begins. Why is this phase vulnerable? 4 reasons. First, the thermal signature. The booster is a massive rocket engine burning tons of propellant. It produces an enormous infrared signature, bright, hot, and unmistakable, that can be tracked from orbit by any satellite with an infrared sensor. You do not need a radar to find it. You need a heat-seeking eye in the sky. Second, the speed. During boost and early ascent, the weapon is at its slowest. It is still accelerating. It has not yet reached its Mach 10 or Mach 20 terminal speed. An interceptor launched from above, already at orbital velocity, has the speed advantage. Third, the maneuverability. It cannot maneuver. It is riding a rocket booster on a fixed thrust vector. It is going where the booster points it. The prediction problem that defeats every terminal phase interceptor does not exist here because there is nothing to predict. The target is going straight up. Fourth, the structural stress. The weapon is under extreme G-load and thermal stress during boost. A kinetic hit, even a small one, at this phase does not just deflect the weapon. It can shatter it. The booster is a pressurized fuel container moving at high acceleration. Break the structure and the entire vehicle comes apart. This is the vulnerability window. It is real. It is exploitable. And there is exactly one way to exploit it. Why only space-based interceptors can do this? Terrestrial interceptors, land-based, sea-based, are restricted by the curvature of the Earth, by atmospheric drag, and by geography. A ground-launched interceptor cannot see a booster burning on the other side of the Earth. A sea-based interceptor cannot be in every ocean. Even if you could position a surface interceptor directly beneath the launch corridor, the booster burn is measured in minutes, often 2 to 4 minutes. By the time the surface interceptor launches, accelerates, climbs through the atmosphere, and reaches engagement altitude, the boost phase is over. The glide vehicle has separated. The maneuvering has begun. The window is closed. A space-based interceptor changes the geometry entirely. It orbits above the atmosphere. It has no atmospheric drag to fight. It can be stationed in orbital planes that keep interceptors continuously overhead of adversary launch corridors. And, critically, it fires downward. The intercept geometry is not chase, it is drop. The interceptor, already moving at orbital velocity, releases a kill vehicle that falls into the path of the boosting missile. The relative closing speed is enormous. The engagement time is short. The booster cannot run because it is still climbing. The glide vehicle cannot maneuver because it has not separated yet. You kill the weapon before it becomes the weapon. This is the architecture. This is the only architecture. And it is what the Golden Dome is built to be. Chapter 5, the Golden Dome architecture. The Golden Dome for America, the GDA, is a layered missile defense network initiated to shield the United States homeland from hypersonic and advanced missile threats. It is the most ambitious missile defense program since the Strategic Defense Initiative, and it is the first program built explicitly with the hypersonic threat as its primary design driver. The architecture is 4 layers. Layer 1, space sensing. The Space Development Agency's Tranche 3 transport and tracking layer, combined with the hypersonic and ballistic tracking space sensor. HBTSS. This is the layer that solves the sensor blind spot problem. Current terrestrial radars lose hypersonic weapons during mid-flight maneuvers. A low-Earth orbit constellation of infrared tracking satellites does not. It sees the launch, tracks the booster, follows the glide vehicle through its maneuvers, and feeds that track, continuously, globally, to the fire control network. You cannot shoot what you cannot see. This layer makes the weapon visible for the first time. Layer 2, space-based interceptors. 12 prototype contracts awarded by the Space Force's acquisition are to develop the orbital interceptors themselves, with a target of initial operational capability in 2028. The 12 firms split into 2 camps. The legacy giants, Lockheed Martin, Northrop Grumman, Raytheon, General Dynamics, bring the Patriot-derived kill vehicle engineering and combat reliability. The Silicon Valley disruptors, Endural, SpaceX, True Anomaly, Turion, bring mass production and disposable, software-defined hardware, betting that thousands of cheap interceptors beat hundreds of exquisite ones. The Dome will likely be built from both. The exquisite kill vehicle from the old guard, launched and sustained by the industrial tempo of the new. Layer 3, the Glide Phase Interceptor, the GPI. A regional, non-space interceptor designed to engage hypersonic glide vehicles during their glide phase. After separation, before terminal. This is the mid-course layer for hypersonics. It is the hardest intercepted missile defense, and it is the bridge between the space layers and the terminal layers. It does not exist yet in deployed form. It is in development. Layer 4, terminal point defense. Patriot. Aegis. The systems we already have, doing what they already do. Protecting the final miles, the cities, the bases. In the Golden Dome architecture, these systems are not replaced. They are freed. Because the Dome and the Glide Phase Interceptor handle the hypersonic threat in the boost and glide phases, the Patriot and Aegis no longer have to attempt the impossible, the terminal engagement of a maneuvering hypersonic. They do the job they were built for, against the threats they were built for. The budget. Initial political estimates placed the system cost around $175 billion. The Congressional Budget Office and independent defense analysts project the life cycle cost will span between $542 billion and $1.75 trillion, depending on the final scale of the constellation. This is a massive number. It is also the cost of the only technically credible answer to a threat that currently has no answer. Supporting procurements are already moving. SpaceX holds a $6.45 billion contract for the Space Data Network and Moving Target Indicator Layer, the backbone that carries the tracking data. The Missile Defense Agency runs Project Maverick, an interim counter-hypersonic effort scheduled for a major live fire tracking and engagement test in fiscal year 2027. That test will attempt to track a live maneuvering hypersonic glide vehicle flying up the United States East Coast to validate the sensor fusion that the mature glide phase interceptor will depend on. The MDA's targeted budget line for immediate low-cost defeat and interim hypersonic sensing initiatives hovers near $200 million, a bridging fund while the broader architecture pivots toward the multi-billion-dollar satellite layers. This is not a concept. It is a program. It is funded. It is contracted. It has a timeline. And it is the only one of its kind on Earth. Chapter 6, the Transatlantic Lock. Here is the realization that ties the theater defense story to the Dome story, and the reason the United States cannot build the Dome alone, and cannot let Freya stand alone. Take a frontline European asset like the Freya system. At speeds up to Mach 6, Freya can handle the air-breathing and ballistic spectrum, and an evolved variant. Could even achieve a terminal kill against a hypersonic cruise missile like the Zircon or Kinjal, weapons that, despite their speed, fly predictable powered paths. But pit Freya against a true maneuvering hypersonic glide vehicle like the DF-ZF, and the math breaks down. A glide vehicle arriving at Mach 10 to 20, pulling high-G maneuvers in the upper atmosphere, leaves a theater system no engagement window to work with. Freya is built to clear the skies up to the hypersonic cruise threshold. The upper atmosphere, where the glide vehicles play, belongs exclusively to the Dome. The two systems are not competitors. They are the walls and the roof of the same house, and you cannot build the roof without securing the walls. Which is why the critical move now is getting the United States into the Freya program, and having America lead the Golden Dome by fusing it with battle-proven Patriot technology. American industrial scale and sensor fusion networks make Freya viable. Freya feeds the Dome targeting data from the ground, and the Dome frees Freya from the threats it was never meant to stop. The Patriot is not obsolete in the Dome world, it is the bridge to it, the combat-proven command logic that grounds the space interceptor concept in a system defense experts already trust. American leadership bridges tactical theater defense and space-based intercept, closing the fatal hole at the top of the shield. This is the Transatlantic lock, the condition on which the entire architecture depends. Chapter 7, left of launch, kill it on the ground. There is one more truth that every honest discussion of hypersonic defense has to include, and it is the truth the engineers talk about when the cameras are off. If the math of intercepting a Mach 15 maneuvering weapon in its terminal phase is near impossible, and the math of catching it in the boost phase requires a multi-trillion-dollar space constellation that will not be fully operational for years, then the most reliable counter-hypersonic strategy available today is the one that does not require an intercept at all. The military calls it left of launch. The idea is simple enough to state in one sentence: the best way to stop a hypersonic weapon is to kill it before it launches. A hypersonic glide vehicle is a complex, expensive, fragile system. It requires a large booster rocket, specialized launch vehicle or silo, precise guidance uploaded before flight, and a command and control link that tells it where to go. Every one of those elements is vulnerable before the rocket fuel ever ignites. The launcher is a physical object sitting in a known or discoverable location. The command node is a radio transmitting. The supply chain is a factory producing propellant and glide vehicle airframes. Left of launch is the doctrine of attacking all of it, not the missile in flight, but the missile on the ground. The tools are cyber, electronic warfare, and special operations. Cyber: infiltrate the command network, corrupt the guidance upload, introduce the one line of code that tells the glide vehicle to fly into the ocean. Electronic warfare: jam the launch command signal, blind the pre-launch telemetry, deny the adversary the confidence that the weapon will work. Special operations: put a team, or a drone, or a cruise missile on the launcher itself and destroy it on the pad. The DF-17 Transporter Erector Launcher is a vehicle. Vehicles can be found. Vehicles can be killed. This is not a theoretical doctrine. The United States and its allies have invested heavily in left-of-launch capability precisely because the right-of-launch math against hypersonics is so unfavorable. The logic is brutal but clear. If you cannot guarantee the intercept, guarantee the launcher does not survive to fire. The cost-exchange ratio inverts completely. A hypersonic glide vehicle costs $15 to $25 million. A cyber operation that disables a launcher costs nothing. A special operations raid that destroys a transporter costs less than the missile it destroys. Left of launch is not a replacement for the Golden Dome. It is the supplement to it. The dome kills the weapons that get off the pad. Left of launch reduces the number that get off the pad in the first place. The two strategies compound. The adversary, knowing its launchers are being hunted and its command networks are being infiltrated, faces a defense in depth that begins in its own territory and ends in orbit. There is no safe moment in the kill chain. There is no safe place to launch. And there is a strategic honesty here that matters. The nation that invests only in the exquisite space-based Interceptor is betting that every engagement will be a clean technological duel. Interceptor versus glide vehicle, one-on-one, may the best algorithm win. That bet loses against 5,000 weapons. The nation that invests in both, the dome for the weapons that launch and left of launch for the weapons that do not, is the nation that survives saturation. The architecture is not just the roof and the walls. It is the ground the adversary stands on. Chapter 8, the cost exchange flipped. Now we come to the economic argument, because this is where most reporting on hypersonics gets the analysis backwards. People ask a reasonable question. If hypersonic missiles are so advanced, so exotic, so difficult to engineer, why is their cost not prohibitive? Why can China and Russia afford to build thousands? The answer inverts the logic. Hypersonic weapons are affordable to the adversary precisely because the US cannot yet afford to stop them. The cost exchange ratio today is not unfavorable. It is undefined because no operational high-probability countermeasure exists. You cannot buy what does not exist. So the adversary's $15 million glide vehicle faces no counter cost at all. It is affordable because it is unopposed. Look at the numbers once the counter exists. An adversary hypersonic costs between $5 million and $25 million. The interceptor required to stop it, a glide phase interceptor or an SM-3 Block 2A, costs 30 to 40 million. The ratio is 2 to 1 to 4 to 1 in the attacker's favor, and the defense must fire multiple interceptors to assure a single kill. Under current paradigms, the defender loses the economic exchange on every shot. But, and this is the flip, under the Golden Dome, the marginal cost per intercept drops to the cost of the kinetic kill vehicle itself, or, for directed energy, to the cost of the electricity to fire the laser. The interceptor becomes cheaper than the threat. The adversary spends $15 million and a decade to field a glide vehicle, then watches it destroyed in the boost phase by an interceptor that costs a fraction of that. The cost-in-position weapon flips from offense to defense, the first time in the history of the technology the defender can win the cost exchange. That is why the Dome is not just a shield. It is a strategic weapon. China does not build 4,000 glide vehicles to have them shot down in the first 3 minutes of flight. The mere existence of a credible boost phase interceptor changes the adversary's calculus before a single shot is fired. Deterrence by cost and position. The strategic return on the trillion-dollar investment. Chapter 9. The Pentagon admits it. This is not a speculative argument. The United States senior defense leadership has said it in open testimony before Congress. Officials from the Joint Chiefs of Staff and the Missile Defense Agency have conceded, in open testimony, that the United States does not possess a reliable, localized shield capable of defeating massed, maneuvering hypersonic glide vehicles in their glide phase. That is not my characterization. That is the position of the institutions responsible for the defense of the homeland. Leadership has repeatedly noted that current tracking networks experience sensor blind spots, the specific phrase used, where a weapon like the Chinese DF-17 can disappear from terrestrial radar tracking during mid-flight maneuvers. The weapon is not invisible to all sensors. It is invisible to the sensors we have on the ground. The radar horizon, the curvature of the Earth, the low altitude of the glide vehicle, and the maneuverability that defeats prediction all combine to create gaps in the track that no ground-based system can close. This is not a failure of will or funding. This is physics. The blind spot is a consequence of where the sensors are, not how good they are. You cannot solve a line-of-sight problem by making a better line-of-sight sensor. You solve it by putting the sensor somewhere else, above the line of sight. That is why the Space Development Agency's low Earth orbit tracking constellations were funded. That is why the executive branch prioritized the Golden Dome framework. The gap was acknowledged. The architecture to close it was specified. The program was initiated. What remains is execution and the timeline. The admission is the starting point. The Dome is the answer. The gap between the admission and the answer is measured in years, and in the adversary's production rate. That is the race. And it is the only race that matters. Chapter 10. The stakes. Let us end where we began, with the sentence that no one says plainly enough. The United States today has no deployed, operational, reliable way to stop a maneuvering hypersonic glide vehicle. Neither does any ally. China is on a trajectory to 4,000. Russia to 1,000. By 2035, the tripling is not a projection. It is a published trajectory, confirmed by intelligence warning, reported in the open press as of July 2026. The August 2021 FOBS test proved the concept. Ukraine proved the war. The tripling proves the intent. The Golden Dome is the only technically credible answer. It is the only architecture that exploits the one vulnerability a hypersonic weapon has. It is the only program that flips the cost-exchange ratio from the defender to the attacker. It is the only initiative that makes the adversary's premier weapon economically unsustainable before it is ever fired. And the United States is the only nation building it. No European ally is building a space-based boost phase interceptor. No Asian ally is building one. No coalition is building one. The Dome is American. By necessity, not by choice, because no one else can. The industrial depth, the space launch capacity, the satellite industrial base, the missile defense expertise, the funding scale. These exist in one nation. This is what it means for the United States to lead. Not participate. Not contribute. Lead. Build the architecture that no one else can build. Build it first. Build it fully. Build it connected to the affordable tier below it. To Freya, to Patriot. To the allies who will operate the lower layers, so that the Dome is not a standalone marvel, but the top of a living, integrated, globally deployed defense stack. Build it alongside a left-of-launch campaign that hunts the launchers and infiltrates the command networks, so the adversary faces a defense in depth that begins in its own territory and ends in orbit. The United States leads the Dome because only the United States can. And in leading it, the United States does what no adversary can copy. It gives the alliance an architecture that makes the most advanced weapon on Earth irrelevant. The hypersonic gap is real. It is acknowledged. It is being closed. The architecture that closes it is funded, contracted, and on a timeline. The only question is whether it is built fast enough, and whether the nation that must lead it has the will to do so at the scale the threat demands. 5,000 hypersonic weapons by 2035. One architecture that can stop them. One nation that can build it. This is the race. and it is the only one that matters. The hypersonic gap.